10 improbable but verified tales of Robert Mitchum. In 1948, as flashbulbs exploded, he was arrested on national television and dragged out of a Laurel Canyon home with marijuana in his pocket. That was a death sentence for a career. Every Hollywood studio anticipated his disappearance. Rather, his subsequent movie became the year's biggest hit. However, no one was aware of this. At the age of 9, the man who the world referred to as unmotivated, careless, and uninterested became a published poet. At the age of 15, he fled a chain gang in Georgia while being shot at. At the age of 22, he wrote music for Orson Welles. On the basis of moral principles, he rejected Patton and Dirty Harry, and he remained married to the same woman for 57 years. He explained to interviewers that he had two acting styles, one that involved a horse and one that did not. He was hailed as the best actor alive by the directors who collaborated with him. These 10 moments from Robert Mitchum's life were recorded. He once remarked, "When I drop dead and they rush to the drawer, there's going to be nothing in it but a note saying later." Let's get started. First of all, 2 boxcars crushed his father. James Thomas Mitchum was employed at the Charleston Navy Yard in South Carolina on February 20th, 1919, as a railroad switchman. He got caught between 2 boxcars after slipping while coupling them. At the Navy Yard Hospital, he passed away an hour later. That same day, the death was reported in the Charleston Evening Post. 18 months was Robert Mitchum's age. Anne Harriet Gunderson, his mother, was expecting their 3rd child. Anne hurried to the Bridgeport Post in Connecticut to work as a linotype operator, transferring her kids between family members in New York, Delaware, and Connecticut. In 1927, she remarried Hugh Cunningham Morris, a British journalist. However, the harm had already been done. Without a father, young Robert developed into the brilliant, violent, and uncontrollable person that every school principal feared. Because he resisted the principal, he was expelled from Delaware schools. And for general disobedience, from Huron High School in Hell's Kitchen, Manhattan. This is the cruel irony. The same way that boxcar hobos perished, crushed by freight trains, Mitchum's father also perished. His teenage son would be traveling across America in those same trains during the Great Depression in just 12 years. Second, his mother sent him into the Great Depression by packing his suitcase. According to mythology, Mitchum fled his home. The facts as reported in the biography of Lee Server, Baby, Robert Mitchum. What's more heartbreaking is I don't care. His mother prepared a sandwich for him to eat on the way and packed his suitcase. He was 14 years old. In 1931, there was nothing left for him to learn in school. Years of true American vagrancy ensued. He traveled the nation in refrigerated trains, freight cars, and flatbeds. He learned how to panhandle, avoid railroad bulls, and steal food from old-time hobos. Before claustrophobia nearly broke him, he worked in a coal mine in Pennsylvania, picked fruit, dug ditches, and washed dishes. He was a professional boxer as well. 27 fights left his left eye scarred and his nose broken. The well-known, heavily lit gay man that audiences would later misinterpret as uninterested was actually the face of a man who had been robbed of his money as a teenager. They weren't character-building experiences. In 1962, he told the Saturday Evening Post, "I learned about the fuzz and the inside of jails. When I was too cold and hungry, I'd check in at the local police station. They'd put me in a cell overnight. They occurred prior to his 16th birthday and were survival." Third, he managed to flee a chain gang in Georgia while being shot at. Robert Mitchum, then 15 years old, dropped off a freight train in Savannah, Georgia, during the summer of 1933. He was beaten with a nightstick, arrested for vagrancy, and accused of being a dangerous and suspicious person with no apparent source of support. The Chatham County chain gang sentence was 180 days. Disease-ridden and infested with mosquitoes, the camp was situated in a pipemaker swamp. In exchange for 1 meal per day, inmates worked 12-hour days, 7 days a week. Her guards tightened their leg irons until they sliced through his flesh, and the wounds, which extended from heel to knee, became septic in a matter of days. Later, Mitchum explained the circumstances. "We received 10 cents worth of bull, Durham golden grain, and 21 to 10 meals per week." Men were dying of swamp fever, gangrene, and tuberculosis all around him. When guards unfastened the leg irons for shoveling work while he was on a road detail, he managed to escape. As shots rang out behind him, Mitchum moved out of the guard's line of sight, waited for a distraction, and ran for a tree. His family had moved to Delaware, so he hitched a ride there. He spent weeks using crutches after the leg infection almost cost him the limb. The detail that surprises people, though, is this. Technically, Mitchum was still on the run from that chain gang when he returned to Savannah in 1961 to shoot Cape Fear. And because of what Savannah had done to him as a boy, director J. Lee Thompson noticed that Mitchum carried a grudge throughout the entire filming. Max Cady wasn't just acting when he displayed that simmering rage on screen. Memory played a part. The scandal that ought to have destroyed him comes in at number 4. 2 LAPD narcotics officers conducted a raid on a cottage located at 8443 Ridpath Drive in Laurel Canyon on the evening of August 31st, 1948. They discovered 20-year-old actress Leah Leeds and 2 other people smoking marijuana with Robert Mitchum, who was then making $3,000 a week at RKO Pictures. It was a setup arrest. For 8 months, police kept an eye on Mitchum, and for 5 months, they bugged the house. Later, it was discovered that the man who had enticed Mitchum to the cottage was the informant. He was never put on trial. Reporters were already swarming the station when Mitchum arrived because newspapers had been tipped off prior to the arrest. Later, Mitchum himself questioned why the newspapers had informed me before I had even arrived that a well-known movie star was going to be arrested on marijuana charges that evening at booking. When asked what his occupation was, Mitchum replied that he was a former actor who had been found guilty and given a 60-day sentence, which included a week in county jail and 43 days at the Sheriff's Honor Farm in Castaic, California. He described the prison as being like Palm Springs, but without the riff-racket trap. As a test, RKO's owner, Howard Hughes, hurried a shelved Mitchum movie, Rachel and the Stranger, into theaters. It became the biggest hit for RKO in 1948. In fact, when Mitchum stepped onto the screen, the audience cheered. Elila Leeds, meanwhile, was given the same punishment for the same offense. Her career was ruined. She never again appeared in a major motion picture, died in obscurity in 1999 after being exiled from California. Who survived was determined by the same arrest, the same crime, studio power, and gender. Following investigations that showed the arrest was a setup, the conviction was formally overturned on January 31st, 1951. It was never made public by Mitchum. The masterpiece that no one wanted was number 5. Robert Mitchum starred in Charles Litton's 1955 film The Night of the Hunter, which tells the story of a murderous preacher who terrorizes 2 kids in order to uncover the money that their deceased father has stashed away. With the phrases love and hatred permanently inked on his knuckles, Mitchum portrayed Reverend Harry Powell. According to the Sight and Sound's 2022 poll, it is currently ranked as the 25th best movie ever made. It was a disaster when it came out. About $300,000 was made from domestic rentals, while the budget was approximately $795,000. Audiences avoided it, and critics wrote it off. Charles Lutton was so heartbroken by the setback that he never directed another movie. For his second project, he had already acquired the rights to The Naked and the Dead by Norman Mailer. He gave it up. Without directing again, he passed away in 1962. This, however, runs counter to Mitchum's self-centered demeanor. Over the years, he has often said that Lutton was his best director and that it was his best performance. Additionally, Mitchum actually directed his child co-stars Billy Chapin and Sally Jane Bruce for the duration of the shoot because Lutton had personally disliked kids. To save the movie, the man who claimed to be lazy and uncaring subtly took over directing. Perhaps the most illuminating evaluation of Mitchum was provided by Lofton. Bob is among the world's greatest actors. Of all the actors in the world, he would be the best Macbeth. His tough talk is blind. He's a well-read, polite, kind man with excellent manners. When he feels like it, he speaks beautifully. One of the most famous images in film, the love and hate knuckle tattoos were featured in Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing and numerous other films. Today, the movie that no one wanted is regarded as one of the best works of American cinema. The Secret Poet is number 6. The information that most drastically damages Mitchum's reputation is this one. At the age of 9, the man who claimed to be unconcerned with anything became a published poet. He started writing poetry when he was 7 years old. He was interviewed and photographed when his work was featured in the local newspaper at 9 o'clock. Later, he thought back on the encounter. This brief spotlight on our material poverty prompted me to reflect, which has always conflicted with my need to express myself. The writing never ceased. The Players Guild of Long Beach performed his children's plays. For his sister Julie's nightclub performances, he composed song lyrics. Additionally, in 1939, when he was just 22 years old, he wrote and composed an oratorio for Jewish refugees that Orson Welles produced at the Hollywood Bowl. He was working with America's most renowned theatrical thinker, despite having no formal education beyond early high school. His mother had given him a photographic memory. He rarely practiced because he could quickly memorize all of the dialogue from a single page. He would annotate scripts with N, which stands for no action required, indicating that he could express the meaning with a glance rather than words. As a teenager living in the tenements of Hell's Kitchen, he devoured Joseph Conrad and Shakespeare Wordsworth. Variety was informed by Shirley Land, who knew him well. He wasn't the cocky he-man that everyone assumed he was. I was drawn to him because he was the intellectual and had an amazing mind. According to Frank Sinatra, Mitchum was the most knowledgeable person he had ever met about music, from Bach to Brebeck. The response from a Mitchum simply demonstrates Sinatra's depth of musical knowledge. The man who said that acting was just a matter of speaking someone else's lines and pulling faces. Before he ever set foot in front of a camera, he wrote music and poetry all his life. On November 7, 1951, while filming 1 Minute to Zero in Colorado Springs, he defeated a heavyweight boxer who was ranked 7th in the world in a bar fight. At the Red Fox Lounge in the Alamo Hotel, Mitchum was drinking when a lieutenant colonel and a soldier named Private Bernard Reynolds got into a brawl. Reynolds was caught by the collar by Mitchum. Reynolds swung in his direction. After deflecting the blow, Mitchum kicked Reynolds in the face and slammed his head against the table. Because Bernard Reynolds turned out to be a ranked heavyweight boxer with 19 knockouts and a 10th place ranking in the world, the story garnered national attention. Lee Server's biography of Mitchum included a candid, unvarnished account of his private life. The rules were not those of the Marquis of Queensberry. Be prepared to go all the way when you mess with an ape. He made a more tactful public statement. The aggressive type who believes that movie Hemen or softies always targets actors. I can always end a fight, but I never start one. This was no Hollywood bluster. Mitchum's 27 boxing bouts as a professional. In the 6'1", 185-pound frame, his years of surviving chain gangs and hobo camps, along with his daily fistfights in Hell's Kitchen, had created real physical danger. In a bar in Tobago, he once flattened 3 U.S. sailors. He was fired and replaced by John Wayne after it was alleged that he threw a crew member into San Francisco Bay on the Blood Alley set in 1955. The reputable boxing magazine, The Sweet Science, came to the straightforward conclusion that Bob Mitchum never really had to act the tough guy. He was the real deal. At number 8, he declined Patton and Dirty Harry out of moral conviction. People who believe Mitchum took any paid role are shocked to learn this fact. 2 of the most famous roles in American film history were turned down by him. Furthermore, his logic betrays a moral gravity that is wholly inconsistent with his public persona. Not that I'm a complete understand. There are movies I won't do for any amount. I turned down Patton and I turned down Dirty Harry. Movies that piss on the world. If I've got $5 in my pocket, I don't need to make money that way. He specifically suggested George C. Scott for the Patton role, claiming that an actor with passion was required because his own lack of emotion would detract from the movie. For Dirty Harry, Scott took home the Academy Award. Mitchum took issue with the vigilante tone of the movie. After accepting the role, Clint Eastwood created a franchise. In 1958, he rejected the Defiant Ones as well. As a real-life chain gang veteran, he found the premise unrealistic, not for the reason people think, because he cared about what stories said about the world. The man who claimed to care about nothing declined roles. The myth of indifference is destroyed by these refusals. He just wouldn't show anyone how much he cared. While filming Heaven Knows Mr. Allison in Trinidad and Tobago in 1956, number 9, The Tough Guy recorded a calypso album. Mitchum became enamored with calypso music. During his free time, he attended street performances in local bars where he saw performers like Mighty Sparrow and Lord Melody. He presented Capitol Records with an album proposal. He recorded the 14-track Caribbean album Calypso Is Like So in March 1957. It was a commercial failure. However, compared to Harry Belafonte's well-known album, it is a far more authentic display of calypso music, according to retrospective critics. There was more to the music career. He co-wrote the song The Ballad of Thunder Road, which spent 21 weeks on Billboard's Top 100. Little Old Wine Drink for Me, a country single from his 1967 Nashville album, peaked at number 9 on the Billboard Country chart and was later covered by Dean Martin. In 1968, he received a nomination for the Academy of Country Music Award for Most Promising Male Vocalist. He was 50 years old. The Dukes of Hazzard was directly inspired by the drive-in phenomenon Thunder Road itself, which Mitchum wrote, produced, and starred in with his 16-year-old son James. The movie ran non-stop in Southern theaters for decades. After seeing the movie's theatrical poster, a calypso album, a Billboard country hit, and a song that inspired him from the man who said he had no talent worth talking about, Bruce Springsteen named his famous song Thunder Road. 57 years old, number 10. Later, in Ashes Scattered at Sea, reads the note. While recuperating from his chain gang leg injuries in Delaware in the fall of 1933, Robert Mitchum met Dorothy Clement Spence, then 14 years old. She remembered him as a fugitive 16 years old and using crutches. Unlike the other boys, he never considered complimenting them. In contrast, all the other boys I knew were incredibly uninteresting. He answered more bluntly, "You'll be farting through silk if you stay with me, kid." In what he described as a Methodist parson's cabbage-scented kitchen in Dover, Delaware, they were married on March 16, 1940. Their marriage lasted for 57 years. The marriage was not flawless. A 3-year relationship with Shirley Land in the early 1960s was one of the documented affairs. Dorothy put up with it. According to one biographer, Mitchum ended the affair because he couldn't imagine his life without Dorothy. Late in life, he admitted he'd been a poor husband, but said there's not one of them, and I've met the best of them, worth lighting a candle for alongside her. They had 3 children, James, Christopher, and Patrine. Together, they formed DRM Productions, producing films, including Thunder Road. Robert Mitchum died at 5 in the morning on July 1st, 1997 in his Santa Barbara home, lung cancer and emphysema. He was 79 years old and Dorothy was at his side. His son Chris said simply, he had a good ride. James Stewart died the very next day. At Mitchum's strict insistence, no memorial service was held. His body was cremated. And on July 6, 1997, his ashes were scattered at sea off Santa Barbara by Dorothy and longtime friend Jane Russell. A cenotaph was placed at Oddfellows Cemetery in Camden, Delaware, near where he first met Dorothy 64 years earlier. Dorothy died on April 12, 2014 at 94. Her ashes were scattered at sea in the same location in hope. Her family said that they would find each other again. The man who said, "When I drop dead and they rush to the drawer, there's going to be nothing in it but a note." Saying later, left behind something far more than a note. He left behind 120 films, a marriage that lasted 57 years and a reputation so carefully constructed as a fraud that almost nobody saw the real man underneath. 10 moments. A father crushed between 2 boxcars. A mother who packed her son's suitcase and sent him into the Depression. A chain gang escape under gunfire at 15. A drug arrest that should have ended everything. A masterpiece nobody wanted. A published poet hiding behind a stone face. A bar fight with a world-ranked heavyweight. Turning down 2 of cinema's greatest roles on principle, a calypso album and a country music hit. And 57 years with the girl he met while walking on crutches. Robert Mitchum spent his entire career building a disguise. He hid his intelligence behind laziness, his sensitivity behind indifference, his poetry behind one-liners, his moral convictions behind shrugs. The sleepy-eyed tough guy was a fortress designed to protect everything vulnerable inside. Howard Hawks confronted him on set once. "You pretend not to care, but you really work very hard." Mitchum's reply, "Don't tell anybody." Hollywood sold him as the man who didn't give a damn. The truth was more complicated and far more human. If you grew up watching Cape Fear or The Night of the Hunter or Out of the Past, you knew the face. Now you know the man behind it. Which moment surprised you the most? The poetry at age 9, the chain gang escape, the 57-year marriage? Let us know in the comments. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories about real people who lived impossible lives. Please give this video a like if you enjoyed it. It truly helps us grow. Thanks for watching. S.